$100 a month for groceries should be enough." "What? Wait a minute, that's impossible." "If you can't keep it down to $100, we're getting divorced, understand?" "You can't be serious." "So you're not even willing to try, huh? I never thought you are the kind of person who never tried. Such a pathetic woman." I felt a sudden surge of anger when my husband said that. If he's going to mock me like that, then I'll prove him wrong. Fine, then I'll make sure we keep our grocery expenses below $100 a month. My name is Anne, a 29-year-old housewife. My husband John and I have been married for a year. John and I met at a group date and decided to get married after dating for a year. "Anne, I want you to stay home and take care of the house once we're married." So I quit my job after getting married and became a full-time housewife. I did like my job, but starting a new life with John was more important to me, so I didn't hesitate to be a housewife. Our life after marriage was sweet and blissful. Every day, I made lunchboxes for John and prepared elaborate dinners. John always said, "Anne, your cooking is really delicious," and his enjoying meals made me very happy. Back then, he had a steady job, and he would always leave work on time and come home early, so the two of us used to have peaceful and happy meals together. But recently, it seems like John's work has become busier, and he's coming home later. He used to be home by 6 p.m., but lately, he often doesn't come home until after 9 p.m. It seems like the increase in work also means he is being counted on more by his superiors and is often invited out for drinks. So every Friday night, he goes out drinking and often doesn't come home until late at night. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't lonely, but John is working hard to improve our life together, so I can't complain. So I decided to make an even greater effort with the lunchboxes, giving John a taste of home. I put so much effort into them. They looked like something you might buy in a department store. So I started making an extra one for myself to eat for lunch, just knowing I was eating the same lunch as John, around the same time during his lunch break, made me feel like we were having a meal together, which was a great comfort. I sincerely hope that my homemade lunchboxes can bring some comfort to my husband, even if it's just a little bit. With that thought in mind, I pour my heart and soul into preparing them. John seemed to notice the changes in the lunches, and after coming home, he would cheerfully say, "Lately, you've been making such extravagant lunches for me. They're all delicious." When he praised me like that, I felt motivated to do even more. Since then, I've continued to work hard on the lunchboxes, making them both tasty and appealing. Before I knew it, cooking was becoming my hobby. I began to take pictures of the lunchboxes and post them on social media, and I was surprised to find that the posts were getting quite a lot of attention. Before, I only had a few followers, mostly friends, but the number of likes and followers started to increase rapidly. This was a first for me, and it was very exciting. I started to see comments from people wanting to know the recipes, so I began to post detailed recipes along with the photos. Sure enough, there were people who tried to imitate and create what I made. I received delightful comments like, "My husband said it was delicious," or "I included it in my child's lunchbox, and they requested it again." And this is a first for me. I was thrilled and was gradually getting into cooking more. It might be even better if prepared in this way. Maybe reducing the amount of this seasoning might bring out the sweetness of the ingredients. As I continued to cook while pondering these things, I found that I had created quite a number of recipes. I hadn't thought I'd pick up a new hobby at this age. My husband John seemed as busy with work as ever, spending less time at home due to overtime and working on weekends. But I didn't feel as lonely as I thought I would, because I used my alone time to study nutrition and even obtained a nutritionist certification. Time flew by, and 2 years of our married life had passed. I started thinking it might be about time to have a child. When I discussed it with my husband, his response was not what I expected. Before we got married, I remember him talking about wanting to have 2 kids, so his reaction was surprising. Maybe he still wants a child, but thinks it's not the right time, or perhaps there has been some change in his mind. Somehow, I felt a bit sad, as if we were not able to communicate properly as a couple. Looking back, I feel that John is less interested in me than he used to be. Our intimate nights have obviously decreased, and even when I try to initiate, I get turned down with excuses like, "I'm tired, sorry." He also stopped giving feedback about the lunchboxes I put so much effort into making. I felt increasingly lonely, wondering if this was the so-called marital doldrums. One day, amidst all of this, my husband made a surprising remark. Anne, aren't you overdoing it with these elaborate dishes? Huh? I'm troubled by you squandering the money I earn. Don't refer to it as squandering. And I haven't been making extravagant expenditures, you know? I'm simply using regular priced ingredients and figuring out recipes to make tasty meals while keeping costs low. That's impossible. Those visually appealing and tasty lunchboxes must cost a lot to make. No, not at all. Just a little ingenuity and preparation can change the flavor quite significantly. Don't lie to me. I know you always take pictures of the lunchboxes you make and post them on social media. Huh? I didn't expect my husband to know about my social media, but it seemed like he hadn't looked through every detail. You're always focusing on making it look good for social media. Stop showing off that you can make these luxurious lunchboxes. It's embarrassing to know that my wife is spending money to get likes. I can't accept my earnings being used to satisfy your need for approval. Why would you say that? I'm not uploading pictures with that intention at all. Initially, I just wanted to share when I managed to make something delicious. And now I'm more focused on challenging myself to enhance the look and taste of meals with cheap ingredients so others can easily imitate. No matter how much I tried to explain to my husband, he wasn't willing to listen. No need for excuses. $100 per month is more than enough for food expenses. What? I was flabbergasted. It would be incredibly hard to keep food expenses for 2 adults at $100 per month. Since John doesn't cook much, he may not know how much it costs. Groceries are not just the cost of the food ingredients. They also include things like beverages, seasonings, oils, and so many more. Keeping it under $100? Impossible. Oh, hold on a minute. There's no way I can do that. Why not? Haven't you been trying to save money by being resourceful with your cooking so far? If so, it should be perfectly feasible. If you can't keep it under $100, we're getting a divorce. What? Divorce? No way! I couldn't understand why my husband John would say such a cruel thing. He used to be so kind. Why did he change? It's unfair to suddenly bring up divorce. If you have any complaints, speak up. Don't make impossible demands. I tried my best to initiate a discussion, but John wouldn't listen. So, you're not even going to try because you think it's impossible from the start? I never thought you were so pitiful. I guess you're just cooking to satisfy your own need for approval. I was furious when John said that to me. If he's going to look down on me like that, I'll show him. Fine, I'll keep it under $100 for the month. No complaints then, right? Yeah, make sure it stays under $100. I was being stubborn. I didn't care that John had changed. I decided to focus all my energy on succeeding in this mission of keeping the groceries under $100 for a month. From then on, I started to make various changes to my cooking. I thought about various ingredients that could substitute for meat, and tried using tofu and fish cake. I also experimented with combinations of seasonings to create different flavors, like mixing bean paste and dried bonito into egg liquid to make an egg saboro that tasted like spicy cod roe. By doing so, I was able to significantly reduce the cost of groceries. In addition, I visited various supermarkets and searched online to find stores that sell pasta and drinks for cheap prices, and worked hard to save money. It was close, but I managed to keep the grocery bill under $100. I gave a mental fist pump saying, "Take that, John." However, John didn't ask about the results or anything. He just went on with his life as usual. I was disappointed that he didn't seem interested in something he had proposed. But I didn't know when he might bring up the issue of groceries again, so I decided to continue with the $100 grocery lifestyle. In order to make it as enjoyable as possible, I started a new project on social media, regularly posting about our life on a $100 grocery budget. As before, I posted recipes so that everyone could replicate my budget-friendly meals. I saw a comment about wanting to see a video summary, so I started uploading weekly videos on a video sharing site that neatly summarized what I was doing. To my surprise, I got a lot of feedback, and the number of subscribers on the video sharing site increased rapidly, enabling me to monetize it in no time. I was amazed at how the world has changed. The more people watched, the more motivated I became, and I kept coming up with new recipes. In the midst of everything, my husband John told me he would be going on a 3-day business trip the week after next. With that news, I figured there would be no need for me to cook, so I planned to return to my hometown. My hometown is quite a distance away, so I would need to take a plane. So I quickly reserved my plane tickets. Then, before I knew it, the day had arrived, and John left the house in the morning with his carry-on suitcase. He planned to drop by the office before heading to the airport. A little while after John left, I packed my bags and also headed to the airport. Since I was only going home, I packed light enough to fit everything into a backpack. Since I packed light, I was able to leave the house quickly and without any hassle. Upon arriving at the airport, I found a casual cafe where I sat back and enjoyed a cup of coffee while responding to comments on my videos and social media posts. Then, I heard it. I could hear John's voice somewhere. Even in crowded places, his voice is familiar, so I instantly recognized it was him. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw John walking in front of the cafe. Just as I was about to call out to him, I noticed a woman walking beside him. What's more, they were walking arm in arm, seeming rather close. I couldn't take my eyes off the pair. That was undoubtedly John. Is he having an affair? Was the whole business trip a lie? I was so shocked by what was happening right before my eyes that I was rooted to the spot for a while. My flight was due, so with a heavy heart, I boarded my plane and went home. My parents warmly welcomed me, but noticed my downcast expression and asked me what was wrong. My parents expressed their anger at John, saying what a jerk he is. That lightened my mood a little. After that, I decided to put John aside and enjoy my time at home. My mom's cooking was delicious, and it reminded me of when I first started living alone and worked hard to recreate her taste in my own cooking. After some much-needed relaxation at home, I returned to our house. Immediately upon my return, I hired a private investigator. I had never been more grateful for my advertising income from my social media. A few weeks later, the investigation results came in. In short, John was having an affair. It seems that his mistress was a junior at his office. Furthermore, after investigating in detail, it appears that their relationship had been ongoing for about 6 months. That timeline coincided with when John started working overtime and on weekends more frequently. Could it be that he was spending too much money on his mistress, and that's why he asked me to save on groceries? Thinking this, everything made sense. An intense rage against John welled up within me, pretending to be frugal when all he wanted was to increase the money he could spend. The audacity. I decided to take some action against John. From the next day, I stopped cooking for him. Huh? Where's my lunch? It's too tough to keep food costs down to $100, so I stopped making it. Here, figure something out with this. Saying that, I handed over $2. Huh? What am I supposed to buy with this? You can buy a convenience store rice ball, right? And maybe a ready-made sandwich or something. With the remaining change, you can get some cheap coffee at the office. Just about making ends meet. Don't joke with me. Can I satisfy my hunger with this poor meal? Even if it's $100 a month, we should be able to use a bit more. Nope, that's still barely scraping by. Spending $2 5 days a week for a month already takes up $40. You'd need to prepare a month's worth of dinners with remaining $60. Well, you could get by if you have instant noodles for dinner every day. Are you kidding me? If I keep having such unhealthy meals, I'll get sick. But if we don't stick to instant noodles around $1.50 each, we can't fit within $100. $1.50 for 30 days is $45. Add that to lunch, and you're already at $85. Then you've got to keep your monthly beverage expenses within $15. Once I explained this far, my husband John finally seemed to understand the difficulty of keeping food expenses within $100. Hold on a sec. So you're saying the lunch and dinners you've been making so far exceeded $100? No, I managed to keep it within $100 through my efforts. Then why don't we just continue that? No way. You and I are strangers now. That's why I'm teaching you how to manage food expenses on $100 without me. What? What do you mean? I thrust divorce papers at my surprised husband. Divorce? Why all of a sudden? It's not sudden. I've been preparing ever since I found out about your affair. Upon hearing this, John turned pale. What affair are you talking about? Pretending not to know won't do any good. I showed him photos proving the affair. I had these investigated and got the evidence. Now there's no escaping it. I'm asking for a divorce and compensation. John was dumbfounded with his mouth open. He probably hadn't expected to get caught. But still, he tried to argue back, perhaps because of his high pride. Sure, I may have had an affair, but won't you be in trouble if we divorce? You were a housewife. How will you get by once you're on your own? Your family is far away. What are you going to do? Wouldn't it be better to forgive your husband's one mistake and continue our married life? I was astounded. What a jerk he was to say such a thing. Sorry, but I have quite an income now. Huh? The social media posts you look down on have led to various work opportunities for me. I also get substantial income from ad revenue from my video posts, and I'm about to release a book of money-saving cooking recipes. Recipe book? You're releasing a book? To tell you the truth, I'm earning a lot more than you are, so I'm not worried about being alone. Really? John thought I was just a housewife and has been looking down on me. He was shocked in various ways when he found out I was earning more than him. He was no longer able to say anything and was looking down. Just fill out the darn divorce papers, will ya? If you put up a fight, I'm game for anything. I said that as I grabbed my bags that I had packed in advance and hightailed it out of the house. Afterward, through a lawyer, I communicated with my husband and the divorce went through without a hitch. I also managed to get alimony from my ex-husband and his mistress. Word spread like wildfire through his office about his affair because one of our mutual acquaintances works there. Folks are giving my ex the cold shoulder for betraying his wife, who packed him a loving, homemade lunch every single day. The mistress couldn't take the pressure and quit her job. My ex is apparently strapped for cash because of the alimony and money he showered on his mistress. He can't quit his job, so he kept working at the same company, dealing with an awkward atmosphere at work. On the flip side, I moved into a lovely place with a state-of-the-art kitchen, and I'm cooking a lot more. My recipe book got published, and sales are through the roof. I plan to keep cooking a bunch of dishes and live a fun-filled life.
Oh, what happened? Did you lose the tuition money, Emerson? I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't know. I'll bring you lots of souvenirs from the Mediterranean, okay? What's with that look, Celine? Are you unsatisfied? Don't complain when you're just a housewife. My name is Celine, I'm 48 years old. I'm a housewife. My husband, Mason, 2 years my senior, works as an office employee. We are a family of 4, my daughter Emerson, my mother-in-law Harper, and us. My alarm clock rings at 4:30 in the morning. It's a daily routine, so I often wake up even before it goes off. I get up early to accompany Harper on her walks. It's just a walk around the house, usually done in 30 minutes at most. Despite this, because it's dangerous, Mason insists on having me accompany her. I suggested, why can't you go with her? But he replied, you just don't get it. I'm working, and I want every extra minute of sleep in the morning I can get. You're a housewife, you have all the time in the world. Thus, the responsibility was pushed onto me. Summer was manageable, but winter was dark and indeed dangerous. Despite my suggestions to take a break, Harper stubbornly continued her routine. As expected, on one cold winter morning, Harper tripped over a small stone and fell. Are you okay, Harper? As I reached out to help her up, she snapped back at me angrily. Hey, Celine? What good are you if you can't even do this simple task? You're so useless. She often finds reasons to hurl insults at me. When we return from the walk, the next activity is Tai Chi. Even here, Harper finds fault with me. Celine, I've told you before, why can't you get these simple movements right? It's like this, do it like this. No, that's not right. Oh, you're so slow to learn. To me, her moves seem more like a comic routine than Tai Chi, but I keep my laughter to myself. After Tai Chi, I prepare breakfast and make sandwiches for Emerson. By this time, Emerson is already up, but Mason is still asleep. When I try to wake him, he responds gruffly, keep it down, you idiot woman. Can't you let me sleep in peace? If I let him sleep until the last minute before work, why didn't you wake me? Now I don't even have time to shave. He gets angry again. Whether I wake you or not, you complain. Maybe you should set your own alarm clock. To which I responds, I work every day for this family, and this is the thanks I get? He takes his frustration out on me. These arguments always seem to happen in front of Harper. Celine, he is right. We rely on him for our livelihood, so you should show more gratitude. She always sides with Mason. I do appreciate him, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't silently put up with his complaints every day and handle all the household chores. I wait up for him when he comes home late without notice, and I've never let the house go without what it needs. Supporting a husband is part of a wife's role, but Mason, without acknowledging my contributions, keeps demanding gratitude and barking orders from his high horse. And then there's Harper, who complains about everything. Living with these two is a constant struggle. Initially, I didn't choose to be a housewife. Before having children, I worked full-time in an office. I quit when our child was born, planning to return to work once they started elementary school. That plan changed because of Harper. After Mason's father passed away and he decided to have Harper move in with us, she started demanding that I accompany her everywhere, to the hospital, shopping, her social gatherings. Our house is conveniently located. The bus stop is right outside, and Harper is perfectly capable of getting around. She's just being unreasonable. And she doesn't help with household chores. Mason unilaterally decided on this living arrangement without considering my opinion. Initially, I hoped her would help with housework. That hope was dashed on the very first day of living together. Celine, I've been a housewife much longer than you, raising children successfully. Now, I plan to enjoy my free time. She stated that outright and truly did nothing at all. If she had just stayed quiet, it might have been bearable, but no matter how diligently I did the housework, she kept calling me a parasite, useless. At one point, I even considered getting a part-time job. But when I mentioned this to Mason, he became irritable and retorted, "What, my earnings aren't enough for you? That's rude. Besides, no company would hire someone as dumb as you. Want to work outside like before? Don't be ridiculous. You should just keep quiet and do the housework." His salary isn't great, but he lords it over me because we have no mortgage. I continued being a housewife, believing I was doing my best for the family. Every time he demanded gratitude, I always thought to myself, "You should be the one showing gratitude first." I always thought this to myself. Since living together began, Harper's dependency on me grew worse. I was the one who always had to drive her everywhere. Carry heavy things? That was me. Any inconvenient errand? Also me. As Harper's clinginess worsened, Mason's domineering nature escalated. He started to utter hurtful words he would never have said when it was just Emerson and us living together. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself, he would invariably snap, "Shut up, you're just a housewife. Who do you think feeds you, you parasite?" That's what he would say. One day, having reached my limit, I started job hunting without Mason's permission and secured a part-time job for myself. When I told Mason and Harper about getting the job, Mason said, "I'll allow it on the condition that you don't let the quality of your housework drop." Fed up with his arrogant tone, I responded, "That's impossible. If you don't want the quality to drop, then Harper will need to help with the housework." He angrily retorted, "You expect Mom to do housework? How cruel. Mom's nearly 80 years old." Harper, with tears in her eyes, pleaded, "That's so cold. Doing housework at my age could hurt my back and legs. I agreed to live with you because you said you'd take care of the housework. Don't make such unreasonable demands." Eventually, my request for shared housework was essentially ignored, and even when I started working and came home late, Harper didn't do any housework at all. I continued to get up earlier and go to bed later than anyone else in the family, accompanying Harper on her early morning walks without a break. I became so busy that I often skipped breakfast and lunch, leading to more days without meals. One day, I fainted from anemia at work. When the company called my family, it wasn't Mason who came to pick me up, but my father, Gavin, from my childhood home. I went back to my parents' house with him. The moment I stepped into the familiar entrance of the home where I grew up, the tears I had been holding back overflowed. I told my father about everything Mason and Harper had done to me, crying all the while. After a while, Mason came to pick me up. Unusually unsettled, he made a brief eye contact to my father and took me back home. At home, an irritated Harper was waiting. "Celine, you are so sarcastic. going back to your parents' house. It's as if you're implying I've been oppressing you. If you had told us, we would have come to pick you up. That's terrible of you. She continued to complain incessantly, not even asking about my fainting or how I was feeling. I was utterly exasperated, but I didn't have the energy to respond. I'm sorry, I said, and then I took the day off to rest. After that, I started finding ways to reduce the burden of household chores. Like using delivery services instead of going to the grocery store and buying ready-made meals, even if it was a bit more expensive. I also started asking Harper to use taxis when I couldn't provide transportation. I didn't want to faint again and be a burden at work. Meanwhile, the harassment from Mason and Harper only got worse. You're lowering the quality of housework, such a terrible wife. A useless and foolish wife. Harper continued with her complaints. I can't eat something this salty. Oh my, it's disgusting. It's like animal feed. Such snide remarks were made persistently, every single day. One day, Harper suddenly suggested going on a trip. She spoke to me in a cajoling tone. Hey, Celine. You must have saved up some money from your part-time job by now. How about we go relax at a resort this holiday season? That year, Emerson was preparing for college, so a trip was really not feasible. Well, Emerson has extracurricular activities and exams, so it's difficult this year. If she gets into college, we can think about a summer vacation. I tried to deflect, but for some reason, Harper suddenly became angry. Celine, that was such a snide move, going back to your parents' house. It makes it look like I've been oppressing you. We would have come to pick you up if you had told us. That was harsh. Frustrated with her ranting, I retorted. Listen, I didn't say we wouldn't go on a trip. I'm saying the timing is bad right now. Emerson is considering transferring if she doesn't get into her first choice college. If she has to transfer, we'll need to buy new textbooks. Can you please stop interfering with her efforts to get accepted? If you insist, I'll make a reservation for you, but please go alone. After I said this, she turned red with anger. You devil! She hissed a parting shot and stormed off to her room. I had been saving my hard-earned salary diligently, preparing for Emerson's college entrance fees and tuition. Since Emerson was planning to transfer if necessary, the money would be needed either way. I didn't want to waste it on a frivolous family vacation for Harper's whims. Several months later, Emerson successfully got into her first-choice university. Watching her daily efforts in studies and extracurricular activities, I felt relieved and incredibly happy. The next day was her high school graduation. During breakfast, Harper, with a smug smile, said, Celine, we're going on an overseas trip tomorrow. Just so you know. What? You mean Mason is going too? Harper had a triumphant look on her face. Yes. You did nothing, so I talked to Mason and he booked it right away. Guess where? The Mediterranean. It's been so long since our last overseas trip. Oh, I can't wait. Harper, are you mistaken about the departure date? Tomorrow is Emerson's graduation ceremony. He is supposed to attend. Right, Mason? I looked at Mason. He was silently sipping his soup, but his face seemed to be holding back a laugh. Emerson, present at the table, looked puzzled. Harper showed me the airline tickets with a mean smile on her face. The departure date was indeed tomorrow. I was so shocked that I froze. Mason, with a nasty grin, said, I was planning to attend the graduation ceremony, but then I thought it's more important to be filial. Just take some photos of the ceremony for me. That'll be enough for me, thanks. That remark snapped me out of my daze. Filial? Mason, we didn't get any bonuses because of the recession. Where did you find the budget for a Mediterranean trip? When I asked, his response was unbelievable. From your savings, of course. Didn't you say it was for the summer vacation? It's the same thing if we use it now. I was astonished and appalled. That savings was for Emerson's tuition, I told you that. What about her enrollment fees? Can't be helped. We've already bought the tickets. Well, I have to go to work. Mom, please pack the bags. As he left in a hurry, I frantically checked my bank balance on my mobile phone. Almost nothing was left. I turned pale with shock. Emerson looked at me, worried. Harper, still smirking, said, "Oh, what happened? Did the tuition money disappear?" "My bad." I said anywhere would do, but Mason wanted to be filial, you see. We could have saved more if it was just a holiday trip. Sorry, Emerson, I didn't know that. We'll bring lots of souvenirs from the Mediterranean. Emerson and I were both frozen in shock. The next morning, Mason and Harper left in high spirits. I was so frustrated that I felt like crying, but I desperately held back the tears. Emerson, who should have been celebrating her graduation, looked gloomy. It was natural, considering her father had brushed her off and used up her college enrollment money. While I understood Mason's desire to be filial, it was unforgivable for a father to deplete the entire savings I had meticulously built for Emerson's tuition. That day, as I watched Emerson receive her diploma at the graduation ceremony with tears in my eyes, I made up my mind to execute a certain plan. It was a last resort. Something I had thought of doing if Mason and Harper's harassment became unbearable. I called my father at my childhood home. I had previously told him about the ongoing harassment from Harper and Mason. This plan was originally his idea, born out of concern for me. With his consent, I gripped a hammer and went to Harper's room. I started to break down the walls with the hammer. It was unexpectedly exhilarating, so I handed Emerson a hammer and together, we went around hitting various spots. Once the room was demolished and I felt a sense of relief, I called a demolition company. The next day, the workers arrived and started demolishing the house. We packed our belongings, watching from a distance as the floors were ripped up and doors fell, and in the evening, we left the house and moved to my father's place. The following Sunday, while relaxing at my parents' house, my mobile phone rang. "Hey, Celine! It's me! What's going on? Our house is gone! Where are you now?" It was Mason, back from the Mediterranean. I told the flustered him, "As you can see, I had it demolished. Your and Harper's belongings have been sent to your brother's place." "What? How dare you do this on your own? Give me back my house. The house you were living in is gone. You might as well rely on your brother now." I said this and hung up the phone. A while later, the doorbell at my father's house rang. Mason and Harper barged in, suitcases in hand, shouting. Harper was red-faced with anger. "How could you do this? You destroyed the unique house that Mason built. Do you even realize what you've done?" My father and I exchanged glances and burst into laughter. It seemed that even in this situation, Mason hadn't told his mother the truth. Standing next to Harper, Mason had shrunk and stayed silent. "What's so funny?" As Harper fumed with rage, my father gently explained, "There seems to be a misunderstanding. That house was in Celine's name." "What?" Harper made a startled sound. "It's true. The land originally belonged to me. But, even if the land was yours, Mason built the house. He worked hard and paid for it with his salary. It was Mason's house in his name, and Celine demolished it without permission. We'll demand compensation for this." Mason was still silent as ever. Harper seemed genuinely unaware of the truth. I reluctantly began to explain. "My father built that house." She turned to me with bloodshot eyes. Her eyes were so wide with surprise, they looked as if they might pop out. "What are you saying? Mason was paying a monthly mortgage. He worked hard and earned the money to build that house. Don't destroy his hard work and then tell such an obvious lie." "Harper, you really don't know? The land belonged to my father, and he built the house. Moreover, the house was in my name. This is the truth. He built the house on the condition that it would be in my name. Mason was aware of this. You seem to be under a big misunderstanding, but please ask him about it." Mason was trembling slightly, still looking down. Harper shouted at him. "You're lying, Mason. Say something in your defense." He, in a weak voice, admitted, "Sorry, Mom. What Celine is saying is true. The house was built by her father for us." "Then, what about the mortgage?" Silence filled the room, speaking volumes. And that silence said it all. Mason had boasted to Harper about a house my father built as if it were his own achievement. My father spoke quietly. "Mason, I built that house for you and Celine to live happily. Legally speaking, it may have been different, but in my heart, I had given it to you. However, unfortunately, Celine was unhappy living there. You and your mother treated her like an unpaid housekeeper. I had essentially lent the land and house to you for free on the condition you would make Celine happy. But since she wasn't happy, I'm taking back the land." Harper's face went pale as if she was about to faint, opening and closing her mouth in disbelief. It was understandable that she had believed all this time that her son had built the house. "Celine, show them what you've prepared." Prompted by my father, I nodded, stood up, and brought the completed divorce papers to the table. I spoke slowly. "I didn't want to destroy the house where I had lived for so long. But you two have treated me like an animal for years. No matter how much you insulted me, I did my duty as a housewife and a wife. But I couldn't bear it any longer. That house no longer exists. Let's end our relationship here today." Mason was slumped over, his head down in defeat. Harper, with a face as white as a famous painter's depiction of a screaming person, was frozen with her mouth agape. This is how Mason and I got divorced. Afterwards, Mason started living in an old house with Harper, reportedly so run down that it was infested with mice. Rumor has it that the house is so old that it's infested with mice. It was a far cry from the spacious, beautiful house my father had built, and surely very inconvenient. But that was no longer my concern. Along with Emerson and my father, I am living happily at my childhood home. My father covered Emerson's university enrollment fee, which I later repaid with my earnings. Despite her busy schedule with studies, Emerson seems to enjoy every day. She happily helps with the household chores. With the help from them, I have more time and financial freedom. Maybe I'll start taking some classes for myself. I'm contemplating that. Right now, I'm extremely happy.